I trusted them on a camping trip, they left me and my child behind. What if the person you vowed to spend your life with, the mother of your child, orchestrated your death and your son's, not with a tool, but by abandoning you both to the merciless wilderness? This isn't fiction. This is my nightmare, and our incredible fight for survival. My name is Marcus, and this is the story of how my wife tried to eliminate us. 2 years ago, my marriage to Sarah was a wasteland. We'd been together for 12 years, married for 9, and somewhere along the way, we just stopped. Stopped being partners. Stopped being friends. We were strangers sharing a house, held together by habit and our son, Jake. Things spiraled, fast, after she got laid off from her marketing job. She blamed me, said I was too consumed by my startup, TechPoint Industries, to see her drowning. Maybe she was right. I was putting in 80-hour weeks, trying to build something for our future. Or so I told myself. So, when Sarah suggested a camping trip with her family and friends, every fiber of my being screamed no. A bad feeling settled deep in my gut. But then, our 10-year-old son, Jake, heard us talking. His face just lit up. He started asking about bears, about fishing. What kind of dad says no to that? I swallowed my reservations and agreed. The group was Sarah, her half-brother Connor, and 2 college friends, Lisa and Monica. I'd never really clicked with any of them. Connor? He peaked in college, still acting like every gathering was a frat party, pushing 40. Lisa was perpetually uptight, judging everyone. And Monica? She was so obsessed with her phone, so caught up in her image, she barely lived in the real world. But Sarah insisted this trip would help us reconnect. She even put her hand on my arm, that old familiar gesture, and said, "We all need this." Looking back, I realized she was acting the whole damn time. The drive to Olympic National Park was about 4 hours. Connor, leading in his beat-up SUV with the cracked taillight, and us following behind. Jake in the back, a million questions, a million miles away from the tension in the front seat. Sarah just stared out the window, lost. It was like the trees held answers she couldn't find with me anymore. We arrived late afternoon, everything bathed in that golden hour light. The campsite was a gravel clearing, giant pines surrounding us, a shallow river gurgling nearby. Connor was already cracking open beers when we pulled up. He tossed one to Sarah, then gave me this weird wink that felt anything but friendly. Lisa, of course, was setting up her tent with military precision. Monica was scrolling her phone, despite the obvious lack of cell service. Jake, bless his heart, was pure energy, exploring everything, even helping Lisa with her tent. She actually smiled at him. A fake smile, but still. That first night, we huddled around Connor's campfire. He claimed he'd chopped the wood, but I'd seen the plastic-wrapped logs in his truck. Sarah sat so close to him, too close, sharing inside jokes I wasn't part of. Monica played terrible pop music. I just sat there, my beer going warm, Jake leaning against me, sleepy. Later, after Jake was asleep in our tent, I stood outside, watching the shapes by the fire. Connor whispering to Sarah, her laughing, swatting his arm. Lisa watching them with this knowing look. Monica had supposedly wandered off for a phone call that wouldn't go through. It all felt so wrong. Like I was watching a play, a performance I hadn't been cast in, but was forced to endure. I went to bed with a splitting headache and a knot of dread in my chest. The next morning, over instant coffee, Sarah, in this condescending tone, told me to take Jake on one of my little walks. There was a short trail by the stream, an hour tops, she said. I didn't argue. Jake was already lacing his hiking boots, buzzing with excitement. I grabbed my small backpack, a map, water, my trusty Swiss Army knife. And we headed out. The trail was actually beautiful. The dense trees blocked out the world, and for about 45 minutes, I forgot all about the tension, the ache in my head. Jake quizzed me on animal tracks, asked if he could build a fort later. Just a perfect dad and son moment. Then we got back to the clearing. Everything was gone. Not packed up. Gone. The tents, both vehicles, all the gear, the coolers. Even the fire pit had been covered with dirt. It looked like no one had ever been there. Jake froze beside me. "Where did everyone go?" he asked, his voice so small. My brain short-circuited. I kept thinking, this is a prank, right? They're hiding, about to jump out laughing. But the air was heavy with silence, not joy. Just the sharp smell of pine. Then I saw it. A piece of paper on the picnic table, held down by a fist-sized rock. I knew who wrote it before I even got close. Connor's handwriting, sloppy and smug. The note said, "This is for the best. Trust me." That was it. 6 words. No explanation, no apology. My heart literally stopped for a second. Jake tugged at my sleeve, "Where's Mom?" I crouched down, looked him in the eyes, and I lied. I told him, maybe they went looking for us. He nodded slowly, but I could tell he didn't believe me. Kids know. I scanned the entire area. Nothing. Not a single thing left behind. No spare food, no water, no extra clothes. Even the first aid kit. They had taken everything, methodically, deliberately. I dropped to my knees where our tent had been, clawing at the dirt, hoping to find something they'd missed. Nothing. They hadn't just left us. They'd erased us. Like we never existed. Like this was always meant to be a one-way trip. I told Jake we'd wait, just in case. He sat, knees to his chest. But I knew the truth. The moment I read that note, I knew they weren't coming back. Hours crawled by. The sun dropped, shadows lengthening. I walked the perimeter again, desperate for a discarded water bottle, anything. Empty. Jake got hungry. I gave him one of the 2 granola bars from my pack. He tried to give me the last bite. I wasn't hungry, I said. He didn't argue. As night fell, the temperature plummeted. I wrapped Jake in the thin emergency blanket from my pack. We huddled under the wooden shelter. I held him close, rubbing his back until he drifted off. My eyes stayed open, fixed on the darkness. What kind of people leave a child behind? It wasn't just Sarah. It was all of them. People we'd laughed with, shared meals with, celebrated holidays with. How long had they planned this? Had they discussed it over wine? Texted about it in some group chat I didn't know existed? Why? That question gnawed at me. Was it me? Our marriage? My work? Did they think I deserved this? Did they think Jake deserved this? I couldn't sleep. Every crack of a branch, every whisper of wind, made my fist clench, made me reach for the knife. I wanted to cry, but I couldn't afford it. Not then. At dawn, I splashed freezing water on my face in the river. My reflection stared back, eyes sunken, jaw tight. Jake stirred. Are they back yet? Not yet, I said. We couldn't stay. Hope was a trap. We needed a plan. And distance. I gathered our meager possessions, the knife, the map, the empty water bottle, a small flashlight. I tore Connor's note into tiny pieces and buried it. Jake looked up, worried. Where are we going? I tightened the straps on my pack. We're going to find help. We're going to be okay. I wasn't sure if I believed it, but I knew one thing, whatever Sarah and the others thought they were doing, they'd underestimated one crucial thing. You don't abandon a man and his son and expect them to just disappear. I decided to follow the stream. Water always leads somewhere. We walked for hours. The actual trail vanished fast. We were just pushing through the forest, climbing over logs, ducking under branches. I used my knife to cut through brambles. I kept my voice light for Jake. This is like those survival shows you love. He grinned. Yeah, but the guy on TV has a camera crew. I actually laughed. Well, you've got me. I'm your crew. By midday, our water was gone. We stopped by a pool. I filtered water through a piece of cloth, letting it settle, praying it was clean enough. Jake sipped slowly. He suggested catching fish. One step at a time, I said. We kept moving. I spotted thimbleberries, made sure they weren't poisonous, and we ate until our hands were stained red. Jake smiled. His first real smile since we'd found the empty campsite. That night, I built a fire. Jake clapped like it was magic. We shared the last granola bar. I gave him the bigger half, but he insisted I take a bite. Then he asked, "Do you think Mom got lost, too?" I stared at the fire, too long, before answering. "I think Mom made a mistake, buddy. But right now, we're going to be okay. Because we have each other." He nodded. He understood more than I wanted him to. He curled up beside me. I stayed awake, every sound a threat. What really ate at me, though, wasn't the external threats. It was the why. This wasn't spontaneous. This was planned. Connor, with his smug smirk, always resented my success. Maybe he thought he was doing me a favor by making me disappear. The next morning, Jake woke up shivering. He was moving slowly, his feet sore, but he never complained. I made him a walking stick. "You're a real outdoorsman now," I told him, and he grinned. We found wild onions. They were sharp and bitter. Jake spit his out, "Tastes like feet." I laughed. That means it's working. That night, near a rock wall, the wind howled. I built a smaller fire. I noticed Jake wasn't eating much. He was tired, he said, and lay down early. His eyes closed fast, but when I pressed my palm to his forehead, he was burning up. Too hot. I dug out some dandelion root I'd gathered. Crushed it, boiled it in a dented tin cup I'd found. The tea was dark and bitter. I lifted his head, helped him sip. "You're going to feel better soon," I promised. He murmured something in his sleep. A single word. "Mom." I turned away, blinking back the rage. I stayed up all night, firelight dancing, my hands clenched around the knife. We were going to survive. Not by luck, not by a plan, but because I would will us through it. Because someone needed to answer for this. Because I needed to walk back into civilization with my son beside me, alive, so they would know exactly who they'd failed to eliminate. By the third day, I understood nature's indifference. It didn't hate us. It didn't love us. It just didn't care. That quiet indifference pressed down on me as I carried Jake through a ravine, his weight lighter than it should be, his breathing shallow. He'd stopped talking, his voice a whisper. His skin was burning. We'd survived on berries, onions, boiled stream water. I'd even roasted a frog for protein, but it wasn't enough. He was small for his age, and this was breaking him. I told myself it was just fatigue, just hunger. But when he started mumbling, feverish and delirious, I knew it was more. I laid him gently on ferns. His face flushed, sweat beading despite the cool air. He shivered, trying to disappear into himself. My hands trembled as I rummaged through the pack. Nothing. No medicine. Only nature's harsh offerings. I remembered the dandelion root for fever. I chewed some myself, then crushed the rest into the tin cup, heated it over a fire I coaxed from damp bark. Jake stirred, whimpering, "Mom." It was a knife in my chest. I wanted to scream her name, demand answers, but I couldn't. He needed me calm. Strong. I helped him sip the tea. He coughed, closed his eyes. His breathing slowed. For a terrifying moment, I thought he was slipping away. I grabbed his hand. It was too hot. I whispered that he was okay, that he was strong, just like his mom used to say. I hated saying it, but he needed something familiar. He just lay there. I sat beside him all night. I didn't doze. Barely blinked. Just watched him breathe. Every movement of his chest was a tiny relief. Every pause, terror. I prayed. Not clean, memorized prayers, but raw, ugly, wordless begging. A bargain with whatever force listened. I hadn't spoken to God in years. But that night, I made promises. If Jake made it, I would become the man he deserved. And I would make the people who did this pay. By morning, the fever hadn't broken, but it hadn't gotten worse. A win. Jake opened his eyes mid-morning. Glassy, but they focused on me. "Water," he croaked. I gave him what I had. He drank slowly. Then he asked, "Are we still exploring?" It almost destroyed me. I nodded. "Yeah, we're just taking a rest." I cleaned him up, made a little shade tent. The day dragged. The fire kept dying. I stayed close, rationing our water. By late afternoon, his fever finally began to drop. Sweating less. Skin cooler. I didn't cheer. I just exhaled. Deeply. I leaned back against a tree, and for the first time in days, I allowed myself to cry. Not loud. Not long. Just enough to let some of the weight shift. Silent tears for a man who'd lost everything but the one thing that still made him human. I didn't sleep that night either, but I closed my eyes, just listening to him breathe. And somewhere before dawn, something shifted inside me. It wasn't rage, I'd had that. It wasn't grief, that had come in waves. No, this was colder, heavier, like steel settling into place. I would get us out. And when I did, I wasn't just going to call the police. I wasn't going to scream. I was going to systematically dismantle their lives, piece by piece. They didn't just abandon me. They abandoned Jake. And that was unforgivable. I looked at my son, curled by the dying firelight. I made a vow to the trees, the wind, to whatever God had listened to me in the dark. They wanted me dead. But I was more alive now than I'd ever been. Day 6 began with the silence of decision. Jake was better, the fever gone, though still weak. His cheeks were hollow. I gave him water, the last of some spruce tips. For the first time in days, he looked at me without that illness in his eyes. "Where are we going today, Dad?" he rasped, but stronger. "Somewhere better," I said. And I meant it. The ridge we'd camped near sloped upward. I'd spent days studying my frayed trail map. Last night, I'd seen smoke. Not wildfire smoke, but a thin, controlled column, rising over the ridge to the north. A fire tower, a ranger lookout. Hope. Jake tried to stand, but winced. His right leg had been bothering him since day 2, but he never complained. I took off my belt, looped it through our pack straps, and made a makeshift sling around his shoulders and waist. It wasn't perfect, but it let me carry some of his weight. We climbed slowly. The incline was brutal, loose rock, fallen branches. My boots slipped. My ribs protested. I caught myself. I had to. I couldn't fall. Jake was mostly silent, conserving his breath. Every so often, "You okay, Dad?" I'd grunt back, "Yeah." "You?" He'd say, "Yeah." We reached a small ledge by midday. I gave him water, let him rest in the shade. I climbed a little higher to scan. And there it was. Smoke. A steady, thin gray column. Controlled. Purposeful. A signal. My knees weakened, but not from fear. From relief. We were close. I slid back down to Jake, a genuine smile on my face. See that smoke? That's where we're going. The final climb was excruciating. My legs screamed. My lungs burned. My hands were raw from grasping branches. Lifting Jake, every time the terrain got too steep. I never let go. Not once. The makeshift sling came undone at one point, and I slipped, landing hard. My ribs shrieked. I bit down on my cheek, forced myself up. Jake was crying quietly. I'm okay, I gasped, brushing myself off. It's just a scratch. We've come too far to stop now. He pointed to my elbow. You're bleeding. Just a scratch, I repeated. The final stretch was the worst. A narrow path over jagged rock, a ravine below. One wrong step. I told Jake to hold my shoulders tight. Each step was slow, deliberate. Until we finally crested the hill. And then I saw it. A silver glint in the trees. Metal. An actual fire lookout tower. Aluminum siding, a faded red roof. Smoke curling from a chimney pipe. Life. Or at least a chance. I almost collapsed. That's it, I whispered. That's where we're going. We descended the final slope. The forest seemed quieter, as if even nature was watching. I knocked on the door at the base with trembling hands. No answer. I circled, found a hatch, a staircase leading up. I hoisted Jake onto my back and climbed. At the top, the door creaked open. Empty, but not abandoned. A cot. Shelves of canned food, beans, soup, almonds. A first aid kit. A flare gun hanging on the wall. I nearly dropped to my knees. Salvation. I laid Jake on the cot. He looked up, exhausted. We made it. I gave him almonds and water. Then I carefully tended his foot with iodine and gauze. He winced, but didn't cry. That night, I stood on the platform, pointed the flare gun to the darkening sky, and fired. The flare hissed upward, a red flower of hope against the clouds. I watched it fade, and then I waited. 30 minutes later, I heard it. The unmistakable sound of rotor blades. A helicopter emerged from behind the ridge, dipping low. A spotlight cut through the branches, scanning. I waved both arms, shouting until my throat was raw. They saw us. The helicopter hovered, descended, kicking up dust and pine needles. A medic jumped out, ran to the tower. Pulled Jake into their arms. I followed, limping, dizzy. I don't remember being lifted into the chopper. I just remember Jake reaching for me, his small hand finding mine. Then everything went black. When I woke up, I was in a hospital room. For in my arm, heart monitor beeping. Jake was asleep in the bed beside me. Clean. Warm. Safe. I didn't know how many days had passed. A nurse came in, called for the doctor. But it wasn't a doctor who arrived first. It was a man in a dark suit, holding a badge. FBI. Mr. Harrison, he said. Do you know your wife filed for your passing last week? I stared at him. The words didn't compute. She what? He nodded slowly. We need to talk. That was the moment I knew. They hadn't just abandoned us. They tried to erase us completely. The hospital bed creaked as I tried to sit up. My body felt alien, stiff, bruised, hollowed out. But none of that mattered after what Agent Coleman had just told me. Sarah had filed for my passing. Not missing. Not endangered. Dead. And not just mine. Jake's, too. Coleman, with a thick, ominous folder under his arm, explained. We received the insurance claim last Wednesday. Your wife submitted it through an attorney. Claimed you went missing on a hike due to stress and mental instability. Said you took your son with you after a series of emotional outbursts. I wanted to laugh, but my throat was too dry. He opened the folder. There were letters, signed notes, supposedly from me, a will, even a psychiatric report from a Dr. Reynolds. He dropped copies on the tray table. They claimed you had a mental break. That you wandered into the woods intending to die. I stared at the pages. I didn't need to read them to know they were fake. But there, in shaky cursive that almost looked like mine, were words I'd never written. They thought we wouldn't find you, Coleman said quietly. They thought you wouldn't survive. My eyes went to Jake, sleeping peacefully in the bed beside me. The thought of him listed as deceased in some government database made my blood run cold. How much? I rasped. Coleman raised an eyebrow. The insurance. How much were we worth to her? He paused. 2.4 million. And another 700,000 in a separate policy through TechPoint Industries, tied to your ownership stake. I closed my eyes. And the others? Connor, Lisa, Monica. All named in the investigation, he said, flipping pages. All corroborated the story. Your brother-in-law claimed he saw you leave the camp alone with Jake, said you were distraught. Sarah backed it up with conveniently saved text messages. Lisa and Monica said they stayed behind because they were uncomfortable with your behavior. He paused. They even hired a notary to certify the new will. I let out a bitter laugh. Let me guess. Sarah was the sole heir. Coleman didn't smile. Correct. I leaned back against the pillows, my pulse thudding in my ears. We're compiling everything now, he continued. But the fact that you and your son are alive complicates their plan significantly. You were supposed to disappear. It's much harder to press an insurance claim when the body walks back into the world. I looked down at my hands. Still scraped and dirt-stained. They left a child behind, I said quietly. That's not just fraud, Coleman said. It's attempted child endangerment. Possibly more, depending on the DA. And now that Jake's recovered enough to speak, we'll get his statement. But I need your help. Your full testimony. Everything. Every detail you remember. We'll pair it with GPS data from the helicopter rescue, the medical evaluations. If we build the timeline tight enough, we can dismantle their entire story. I nodded. Coleman met my eyes. Sarah hasn't been arrested yet. We didn't have enough. Until now. Something in me shifted. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This was war. 3 days later, Jake and I were discharged. He clung to my side like a shadow as we stepped into the sunlight. I was 20 pounds lighter, limping, bruised everywhere, but I was upright. We were taken to a safe house. Coleman visited daily, walking me through documents, transcripts, surveillance footage, timelines. We stitched together every lie they'd constructed. Receipts from hardware store purchases, days after we were supposedly lost, showing Sarah and Connor buying replacement camping gear. ATM footage of Monica withdrawing cash to pay the notary. A paper trail of digital signatures on the insurance claim, timestamped just 2 days after Jake and I had vanished. And then there was Jake's voice on the recording, calm but clear, telling a child psychologist that he and Daddy went on a short walk and came back to an empty campsite. When Coleman heard it, he said, "That's it. That's what we needed." I asked when they'd bring them in. He looked at his watch. "We already are." That afternoon, they executed the warrants. Connor was picked up from a gym. Lisa was cornered in her classroom, teaching 4th grade. Monica was pulled off a flight to Las Vegas. And Sarah? She was at brunch, wearing my late mother's earrings, laughing with friends. Coleman showed me the footage later. She didn't flinch when they read the charges. Just calmly placed her mimosa down and asked if she needed to finish paying the bill. But when she saw the cameras outside, her face changed. That was the moment it hit her. I was alive. And I was coming for everything. The trial was everything I'd expected, and more. I stood outside the courtroom in a navy suit that hung loose on my frame, my reflection unfamiliar. Jake was inside with my sister, reading quietly. He didn't need to hear this. He'd lived through enough. Inside, Sarah sat with her co-conspirators. Connor, arms crossed. Lisa, in dark sunglasses. Monica, chewing gum like this was just an inconvenience. Sarah, front and center, like it was another business meeting. None of them looked at me when I walked in. My lawyer, Patricia, dropped a thick folder in front of the judge with a sound that made the room flinch. "Your Honor," she began, "what you're about to review isn't simply evidence of a forged will or fraudulent insurance claim. It's evidence of a coordinated attempt to profit from the staged disappearance and presumed passing of my client and his 10-year-old son." The judge nodded. "Proceed." First came surveillance photos. Sarah and Connor at a hardware store, buying supplies 2 days after we went missing. Then receipts, gas station logs, credit card swipes, timestamps that didn't align with their statements. Then the audio. A voicemail Sarah had left on Lisa's phone the day before the camping trip: "Make sure the gear is packed in Connor's car. Marcus is going to take the bait. Jake, too." The courtroom went silent. The judge leaned forward. "Play that again." Patricia did. It landed even harder. Then came the forged psychiatric letters, supposedly from a Dr. Reynolds, claiming I'd shown signs of breakdown. The judge narrowed his eyes. "We've subpoenaed Dr. Reynolds. He confirmed he's never met your client. His signature was copied from an unrelated document." Sarah shifted. Connor stopped tapping his foot. Patricia handed over the signed will, claiming I'd revised my estate 6 days before the trip, leaving everything to Sarah. "And the notary?" the judge asked. "She's here, Your Honor." A woman in her 50s took the stand, voice shaking. "I was paid under the table to stamp the document. I never witnessed a signature. I never met Marcus Harrison. I was told it was a rush job for a man leaving the country." She started crying. "I didn't know there was a child involved." Then it was my turn. I walked to the witness stand, slowly. Every step reminded me of ribs that never quite healed. I told the court everything. The trip. The hike. The note. The fever. The fire tower. The flare. When I got to the part about Jake asking for his mother, delirious with fever, I had to stop. I looked at Sarah. He asked for you, I said softly. While he burned with fever. While he lay in the dirt, thinking you were coming back. And you weren't. Patricia touched my shoulder. I turned back to the judge. We survived because we had to. But I want it on record. The people sitting over there didn't just try to steal my company. They tried to erase me. And they were willing to let a child die to do it. The silence was thick enough to cut. During a break, Sarah finally looked at me. Her eyes were cold, not regretful, just calculating. The judge announced his ruling. The evidence establishes clear grounds for a criminal trial. This court finds sufficient cause to move forward with formal charges of insurance fraud, conspiracy to commit fraud, attempted child endangerment, and falsification of legal documents. You are remanded into custody until trial. Connor stood to protest, but was stopped by bailiffs. Monica looked stunned. Lisa started crying. Sarah just blinked slowly. I walked out, not as a sufferer, but as a man who'd pulled his son from betrayal and brought truth into the light. The actual trial took weeks. Email threads between Lisa and Monica. Is it done yet? He won't last 10 days out there. Not with a kid. Texts from Connor to Sarah. We'll file Monday. The sooner the better. The notary testified again about the cash payment at a diner. Security footage showed Sarah alone at a bank 3 days before the trip, speaking to a financial advisor about liquidating a trust from my late grandfather. He won't need it, she'd said on camera. He's going through something. Connor's lawyer claimed he believed I was suicidal and had simply panicked. Then they showed a clip from Connor's podcast where he joked about camping. Don't leave your brother-in-law in the woods, unless you're ready to cash out. The room froze. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. For all 4 of them. Sentencing. Sarah got 15 years, eligible for parole after 10. Connor got 12. Lisa and Monica each got 10 years. Outside, reporters swarmed. Mr. Harrison, how do you feel? I looked down at Jake. 10 days in the woods taught me who my real family is. And it's not defined by blood. It's defined by who shows up, who stays, who fights. Jake and I moved to a small house near the coast. 2 bedrooms, a front porch, a yard. I painted his room sky blue, let him pick dinosaur bedding. We got a rescue dog he named Scout. The dog follows him everywhere. I rebuilt Tech Point from scratch. No investors, no board, just a small team who believed in what we were creating. It wasn't about money anymore. It was about building something that was genuinely mine. Jake's doing well now. He smiles more, sleeps better, but sometimes I catch him holding the old compass I gave him. He carries it in his pocket like a talisman. One evening on the back porch, he asked, "Why did they do it, Dad?" I didn't sugarcoat it. They thought we were in their way. That their lives would be easier without us. He nodded, then said, "They thought you wouldn't fight back. They always talked over you. They thought you were weak." He was right. I'd made myself small in that marriage, convincing myself it was for peace. But it was really fear. The wilderness stripped that away and left only survival instinct. That's what saved us. Jake started drawing again. He showed me a picture of a man and boy on a hill, a fire behind them, stars above. "That's us," he said. "What's the fire mean?" I asked. He thought for a second. "It means we didn't go out." He's right. We didn't, and we never will. Those 10 days didn't just test us. They forged us into something stronger. Sarah and her accomplices tried to erase us, but they underestimated something fundamental. Survival isn't about having the right gear. It's about having something worth fighting for. I had Jake. That made all the difference. We beat 10 days in hell. Now, every day after feels like a gift. I rebuilt my company. Jake's thriving. We have our house, our dog, our routines. We have peace. Sometimes I wake up thinking I'm back in those woods, hearing branches crack, feeling that cold. But then I hear Jake breathing in the next room, or Scout's collar jingling. And I remember, we made it out. We survived. The people who tried to destroy us are behind bars, while we're living the life they tried to steal. That's not revenge. That's justice. Sarah sent a letter from prison. She said it started as a joke that spiraled. But you don't file fake death certificates as a joke. You don't abandon a child in the wilderness as a joke. The truth is, some people are capable of incredible cruelty when they think they can get away with it. But they didn't get away with it. We came back. We testified. We made sure everyone knew exactly what they'd done. Jake asked recently if I was angry. I told him I was, at first. Furious, actually. But now, I'm just grateful. Grateful we survived. Grateful he's safe. Grateful we get to build this new life together. They made a mistake, he said, echoing my words from the woods. Yeah, I agreed. They thought we'd disappear. Instead, we came back stronger. He smiled, went back to his homework, Scout dozing at his feet, and I made dinner. Normal. Peaceful. Ours. That's what survival looks like now. Not dramatic, just a father and son living their lives, moving forward, refusing to let the past define them. We made it through 10 days of hell. Everything after this is just a bonus. Have you ever faced a betrayal so profound it changed the course of your entire life? Or been underestimated by someone you once trusted? I really want to hear your thoughts down in the comments. What would you have done in my place?